Saturday the 7th, 2 o'clock. It's not Crackerjack, it's a BIS, West Midlands branch talk, Pets in Space. So welcome everybody. It's good to see you all. So in a few minutes, Alan Marlow will be giving his talk. I've got some slides I want to show because young Mark sent them across and he's very pleased about them. So I'm going to, because he's got a picture of his dog in it. So this afternoon, Alan Marlow will be giving a talk about pets in space, and we'll have questions and answers after that. For that, I'll act as moderator. If you could put your questions into the chat, then I'll try and pick them up in chronological order as we go through. So we always have a wrap up at the end. If anybody wants to stay along and contribute and get involved in the branch, please stay on. Very happy to see you. And Mara did this, so a nice picture there of Alan. I kind of forgotten your dog's name. We'll find out that in a moment.
Okay.
We've got Belka. Of course.
Yeah.
What else would it be?
Space dog.
Yeah. And then I think that's Colt, Mark and Liz's dog, and you can see the old BIS crest on his coat there. I think we all know Alan Marlow. Alan Marlow is, I think he's been in the BIS considerably longer than I have, and of course he's part of the West Midlands crew. And you'll have seen him about ex-BBC, and he's also he's contributed immensely to the BIS member zone, the BIS YouTube channel. So I'll stop there and I'll pass you on to Alan. Alan, do you want to take over?
It's afternoon all, and thanks for tuning in. I hope you're going to find this interesting. So I'm going to have to turn my video off because I've got some videos to run, and I need all the bandwidth I can get. First thing I'd like to do is just run a couple of little videos as a kind of introduction to this thing. So hopefully these will work. I'm sure Bob will report back to me if they don't. Oh, good girl. Okay, so this is Belka. Belka is our red and white border collie, and Belka's very good at agility. She wins quite a lot of prizes at agility, but for all practical purposes, she's completely useless, really. She doesn't go up the side of mountains looking for injured climbers. She doesn't herd sheep. She doesn't go into airports trying to sniff out drugs and bombs and things like that. So practically she's of no use at all, really, but she's an important part of our family, and my wife would probably say she's the most important part of the family, certainly less trouble to live with than I am. She doesn't need the toilet seat up. She doesn't walk around the house whistling all day. She doesn't complain about having to sit and watch soap operas in the evening. And she doesn't sit and watch boring old space programs at night. So the question is, as we move out into the solar system and possibly begin to colonise the other planets and other worlds of our solar system, will we take our animal companions with us, or will we leave them behind? And if we do take them with us, what are going to be the implications of that? What are going to be the things that we have to consider when we think about taking our animal companions with us out to the other worlds of our solar system? Before we go any further, I just want to show a little bit of video of Belka doing agility. You all right, Belle? Okay, that's a bit of an excuse to show what a clever dog we've got. But on top of that, it beautifully sort of demonstrates the almost sort of telepathic emotional bond there is between the handler and the dog. I mean, there's obviously uh, verbal cues going on there and hand cues, body language and so on. But it's almost that sort of link between the dog and the handler, which I find quite interesting. In Britain, we love our pets. I mean, if you look at this graph, 13.5 million households have dogs. Similar sort of number for cats, and then birds and domestic fowl and rabbits and things like that. We absolutely love our pets in this country, and those figures are probably sort of similar for other countries around the world. And we spend an awful lot of money on our pets. In the UK, we spend somewhere around £10 billion a year. By the time we sort of bought the pet, put it to bed, fed it, got it insured, taken it to the vets, bought it all the bling collars and the leads and goodness knows what else. It's an awful lot of money. I really don't want to think of the proportion of money that we've spent on our dog over, the years, which contributed to that 10 billion. And of course, astronauts and space travelers are no different. They have pets. They love their pets. This is astronaut Leland Melvin, and astronauts get the opportunity to have their photograph taken with their family. And Leland Melvin said, well, actually, I'd quite like to have a picture taken of me with my dog. So he snuck his dogs into the studio and had this picture taken of him with his dogs in his orange spacesuit. And when they're in space, people miss their dogs. This is a little bit of video of Christina Koch, who is hopefully shortly going to the moon, after she came back from a 328-day trip on the ISS. Yeah, never mind the husband, say hello to the dog. And our association with dogs goes back, getting on for 20,000 years. The sort of common conception is that when human beings were hunter-gatherers, wolves would follow them around. So effectively, the humans would make a kill, they would take whatever they could off of the carcass, and then the animals would move in afterwards and clear up the rest of the carcass. And over time, the dogs and the human beings got more and more used to being with one another, and the dogs actually became part of the tribe. They would take part in the hunting, and they would share with the kill, they would share the shelter and so on, and they would become part of the tribe. And this is a cave painting from around about 17,000 years ago, from southern France, which illustrates a dog-like animal, which has been drawn there. And at the bottom there's a piece of rock art from Algeria, which is somewhere between around 7,000 and 10,000 years ago, which shows a hunting scene in which human beings are hunting with dogs. So our association with dogs goes back a very, very long time. Because the dog probably initially thought, this is quite good, I'm getting fed, I'm sharing I'm sharing the benefits of being with human beings. Never dreaming possibly that there was a downside to it a bit later on. Cats was the domestication of cats was a slightly different matter. Cats, it's believed, were domesticated around about 10 or 12,000 years ago, and that coincided with the time that human beings moved from being hunter-gatherers to settling down to being farmers. So instead of moving across the land all the time hunting, they actually began to raise crops. They began to raise cattle and sheep and chickens and so on. And of course, when they brought in the crops, they stored them, which was, a feast for vermin like rats and mice and small birds and so on. And the idea is that at that stage, cats moved in, and that was a happy hunting ground for them, hunting rats and the mice and so on. And of course, similar thing happened as the human beings and the cats got used to one another. They started to shelter under the same buildings, etc. And they formed a relationship, a bond between each other. And of course, dogs were also part of that domestication at that time. This is the time when we first see sheepdogs. The original job of sheepdogs wasn't actually going around and herding them up. It was actually going out onto with the flocks and actually protecting flocks of sheep from bears and wolves and big cats and things like that. And this is quite a good illustration of the fact that, these weren't just regarded as working animals. They weren't just there doing a job. They were actually an integral part of the community. They were loved and, a part of the family, if you like. This is a recreation of a burial from about 9,500 years ago, in which a human being and a cat are buried together. And it sort of demonstrates that, for a long, long time, human beings have had this relationship with their animal companions. Because in a lot of societies, a lot of cultures, animals were venerated by human beings. The classic one, of course, was ancient Egypt. You've got Anubis, which was the dog god, depicted either just as a dog or as a dog-headed man, and Bast or Bastet, which again was depicted just as a cat or as a cat-headed human being. And as we began to move out and explore the world, our animal companions went with us, on our great sailing adventures, exploring the world. And this is a story which I find quite nice. This is Matthew Flinders. If ever you're in London, if you're going to London and you're around Euston Station, if you get a minute, just go outside onto the concourse outside, and there's a statue of this chap, Matthew Flinders, who was a Royal Navy sea captain at the end of the 18th century, beginning of the 19th century. And Flinders circumnavigated the world, and he was the first person to actually map Australia. And his constant companion on those adventures was his cat Trim. Being a sea captain at that time was probably quite a lonely occupation. You had to maintain a distance between yourself and the rest of the crew so that you could maintain your authority. But his companion was Trim, and he writes of him, the best and most illustrious of his race, the most affectionate of friends, faithful of servants, and best of creatures. He made the tour of the globe and a voyage of Australia, which he circumnavigated, and was ever the delight and pleasure of his fellow voyagers. Written by Matthew Flinders in memory of his cat. And he even wrote a little book dedicated to Trim